Last week in Daniel chapter 10, we find Daniel standing beside the Tigris River, and he's so concerned. He's been fasting and anxious to understand what had been revealed to him previously. And I'm getting wet. And the whole chapter is taken up with Daniel and his concern and the angel appearing to him. And now, excuse me, in chapter 11, we find, I was trying to count out how many historical details, but I lost count. There are just so many historical details which confirm the historical accuracy of what is going to happen in the future, because it's not only in the future of Daniel, but it's the future that we stand in ourselves today. But this chapter establishes the credibility and the absolute certainty that God is in control, that God knows all things, and that he knows the rise and fall of nations and the powers that influence and affect his people, right down to the very end of time. And that's where this chapter takes us. And so there's a lot of history that we're going to be reading today, but it's for the very purpose of establishing the absolute credibility of the Word of God. That when we look at the world events today, and it's uncertain as to how things are going to unfold. We know the ultimate outcome, but how things are going to unfold, we don't know. But we do know that God is in control, and that even though we can't interpret sometimes what is happening because you don't see how it fits into the future, we know for certainty that we can trust the Word of God, because it looks as if one power is going to dominate. For example, people look at the rise of China, Russia, and they question, well, who's going to be the superpower? Well, we know who's going to be the superpower. No matter what appearances may be at the present time of how strong the military might of China may be and its financial power, its strength, we know that America is going to ultimately be that superpower that will lead the world in desecrating the Sabbath and the leading out in the death decree against God's people, those who dare to take that stand on God's side relative to the Sabbath. So let's just get into this in chapter 11 of Daniel, verse 1. It says, also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, stood, I can't read that one word there, stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And so at the end of chapter 10, we find Gabriel talking with Daniel here in the first verse of chapter 11. And there's no break between 10 and 11. It's an artificial break here. It's continuation of chapter 10. We have the continuation of that conversation between Daniel and Gabriel. There's no break between these chapters. It simply continues on. So we're still at the junction of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And now let's see what happens. Even in the first year of Darius, when the Medes and Persians overtook Babylon, Gabriel was there by Darius' side to confirm and establish him and strengthen him. This truly shows that God is ultimately in control of world events. As the writing on the wall sealed the probation of Babylon and God's protection withdrew from them, he in turn strengthened Darius the Mede to overrun the Babylon, as we have already seen in chapter 5. So verse 2, and now will I show you the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up against the realms of Grecia. So this is in Daniel's time. The Medes and Persians have conquered Babylon. But Daniel also knows what's already been revealed, that the nation of Greece is to rise up next. So let's look at the three kings, yet three kings in Persia. This doesn't include Cyrus, as we find there shall stand up yet three kings. The word yet in Hebrew means besides, still, henceforth. So we see that there was to come another three kings and after Cyrus. These were Cambyses, the son of Cyrus, 530 to 522, false Smerdis, an impostor who impersonated the real Smerdis to obtain the throne. The real Smerdis had been caused to be killed by his brother Cambyses. Then there was Darius Astapus, or Darius the First, who married a daughter of Cyrus. So that is historical fact. The fourth shall be far richer. This was Xerxes, or Ahasuerus of Queen Esther, the son of Darius Astapus. Xerxes was far richer than all before him. So the next part of that verse, it says, strength through his riches against the realm of Grecia. Because of his wealth, Xerxes was able to stir up an immense army against the warlike Greeks, according to Herodotus, who lived at that age. His army amassed to 5,283,220 from the east alone. But not content with this, he enlisted the Carthaginians of the west, which added another 300,000 men. In total, he had raised over 5.75 million men to go against the Greeks. He defeated the Greeks at Thermopylae, lost the battle of Samalis in 480 BC. He lost after this at Plataea in 479. The war ended in 467 BC. Even though he had amassed this great army, he was finally defeated, because that's what history tells us. That's what the Bible reveals, and that had been revealed to Daniel. So in Daniel chapter 11, verse 3 and 4, it says, and a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he rules. For his kingdom shall be plucked up even for others beside those. So first of all, a mighty king. Alexander the Great is easily placed in the prophecy here, as you will see from chapters 2, 7, and 8. From the very fact, as we continued on, great dominion. Alexander finally defeated the Persians at the Battle of Arbela in 331 BC. He continued his campaign all the way to the borders of India and south through to Egypt. His dominion was far greater than that of the Persian Empire. The next part, when he shall stand up, or when he is at his peak, at his highest strength. The kingdom broken, divided toward four winds. When Alexander was at the height of his power, a fever killed Hephaestion at Ecbatana. Hephaestion was a young man dear to Alexander. On returning to Babylon, a vast funeral was erected, costing over $10 million. To drink to intoxication at a funeral was required as a token of respectful sympathy toward the deceased. Alexander spent 2 nights in unmeasured indulgence, which so aggravated the germs of fever in his system that he continually grew worse and in a few days died. He was asked to whom the kingdom would go. His reply was, to the strongest. He was said to have drunk equal to the 21 guests, and then twice drank full of the Herculean cup containing over 1 gallon of alcohol. Alexander died in 323. Immediately, 36 generals scrambled for power, and by 314 BC, that's 9 years later, Seleucus, Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Cassander formed a league against Antigonus, another general who had the largest influence in the remains of Alexander's realm. The contest ebbed and flowed. Seleucus gained Babylon in 312 BC and established a long line of kings. Lysimachus and Ptolemy assumed the title of kings in 305 BC, and Cassander about the same year, so that 3 years later, this League of Four planned a campaign against Antigonus, who brought on the Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC, and definitely established the 4 divisions of Alexander's former kingdom into north, south, east, and west, or the 4 winds. And that's, again, the fulfillment of the prophecy. And it says, not to his posterity, not to Alexander's. Alexander's sons and relatives were slain so that there was no interference to the ruling of any part of the kingdom. None of the kingdom went to Alexander's family. Another detail, nor according to his dominion. No one person was to rule with the dominion that Alexander had. This remarkably came true as prophesied. And then it was plucked up. Cassander took the west, Lysimachus took the north, Seleucus took the east, and Ptolemy took the south. Others beside these. Other besides simply means others beside Alexander's posterity or his family. Then in verse 5, it says, and the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So the king of the south, that was Ptolemy Soter, who had Egypt, Palestine, and part of Syria. In the south is the king of the south at this point of prophecy. He was to be strong and rule from 323 to 285 BC. Then it says, one of his princes, one of the mighty King Alexander's princes, strong above him, have dominion and great dominion. Lysimachus took over Cassander's territory, and then Lysimachus lost all of it to Seleucus Nicator, who now had 3/4 of Alexander's kingdom, leaving Ptolemy in the south with 1/4. So that's how it came down to the 2 between the north and the south. Verse 6, and in the end of years, they shall join themselves together. For the king's daughter, that is the north and the south, the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. So the first part of the verse is, they shall join themselves. Ptolemy, Philadelphus, in 285 to 247 BC, the second king of the south,